Somewhere in Britain tonight, a bloke is standing on his driveway in the rain, keys in hand, staring at his car through the kitchen window of his own garage. He's not allowed to put it in there anymore. Not because the council said so, not because the neighbours complained, because the people who built the thing wrote to him and told him in plain black ink that if he parks it under his roof and it decides to catch fire in the night, they can't promise the house won't go with it. That car is a Jaguar, an electric one. And he's one of tens of thousands of British owners who woke up one morning to find that the safest place for the most expensive thing they've ever bought is now the middle of an open field, as far from anything they love as they can reasonably get it. How does that even happen? How does a car you paid the thick end of 60 grand for end up banned from your own garage? That's what we're getting into. Because this isn't a rumour off a forum. This is the DVSA, the manufacturer, and a stack of official recall paperwork, all pointing at the same thing. And the numbers behind it are messier and frankly scarier than the headline lets on. Let me take you back to where it starts. The Jaguar I-PACE landed in 2018, and for a minute there Britain was genuinely proud of it. Here was a proper British mark, a Coventry name, beating Audi and Mercedes to a credible electric SUV. It won European Car of the Year. It won World Car of the Year. Motoring writers who'd spent decades being rude about Jaguar reliability suddenly went soft. 2 electric motors, one on each axle. Around 395 brake horsepower. 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds, which in 2018 felt like witchcraft in something shaped like a family car. A 90 kilowatt-hour battery, an official range north of 290 miles, and a cabin that smelled of money. For a while, if you saw one gliding silently through a Waitrose car park, you thought, that's the future, and for once the future is ours. Here's the thing about that battery though. Jaguar didn't make it. The cells came from LG Energy Solution, built at a plant in Poland, and the specific fault everyone's chasing lives inside those cells. It's a tiny thing, a folded anode tab. Picture the inside of a battery cell as layers of foil folded together very precisely, like the world's most delicate millefeuille. If one of those internal tabs gets folded wrong at the factory, it can eventually work its way into a short circuit. And a short circuit inside a lithium cell doesn't just trip a fuse. It starts a chain reaction the engineers call thermal runaway, where one cell cooks the cell next to it, which cooks the next, and the temperature climbs past anything a fire crew can easily stop. The battery becomes its own fuel. Water doesn't put it out so much as keep it company. Now Jaguar knew something was wrong reasonably early. There were software updates, there were quiet fixes. The idea was, you cap how full the battery ever gets, because a cell that's stuffed to 100% is a cell under stress, and a stressed cell with a manufacturing flaw is the one that goes bang. So owners got an update that limited charging, first to around 80% on some cars, later a version that let them creep back toward 90, live with a bit less range, the thinking went, and you live without the fire. Problem managed, everyone move along, except it wasn't managed. That's the part that turns this from an ordinary recall into something owners genuinely lost sleep over. Cars that had already been fixed, cars that had the software update sitting right there in the system, caught fire anyway. A small number, Jaguar stressed. And they're right, it was a small number against tens of thousands on the road. But if you're the owner, the statistic that matters isn't the fleet. It's your car, in your garage, under your kids' bedrooms, at 3 in the morning. And we fixed it but a few still burned is not a sentence that lets anyone sleep. So the guidance got blunt. Park it outside, park it away from structures, charge it outside, away from the house. Not for a night. Keep doing it. In some notices for 30 days after any work, in others until a permanent fix existed at all. And here's the number people cling to. The DVSA, Britain's own driver and vehicle standards agency, reckoned more than 26,000 I-PACEs built up to the end of the 2021 model year were caught up in it. Jaguar Land Rover looked at the same fleet and said no, it's closer to 16,300. 2 official bodies, 2 answers, tens of thousands of cars in the gap between them, and not a single owner able to tell you with certainty which side of the line their own car sits on. Factory records say one thing, the safety agency says another, and to this day nobody's fully squared it. Think about what a folded anode tab really means for a second, because it's almost poetic in how small it is. Inside every one of those cells sit thin metal tabs that carry the current in and out, and they're folded and stacked by machine at enormous speed. Get the fold fractionally wrong, and you plant a seed. The cell works fine for months, years even. It charges, it discharges, it drives the school run, and the motorway slog, and the trip to the tip, and all the while that misfolded scrap is quietly rubbing against something it shouldn't. Then one ordinary day, parked, doing nothing, not even plugged in, it finds the short. And the car that started every morning without complaint becomes the thing the fire brigade puts in a skip full of water and watches nervously for a day and a half in case it wakes back up. Nobody could have spotted it. There's no warning light for a fold in a piece of foil. And that's before you widen the lens, because worldwide, across every market and every model year the fault touched, the I-PACE recall swelled to somewhere near 63,000 cars, 63,000 vehicles, all carrying the same nervous little question inside the floor. When you hear a number like 40-odd thousand attached to Britain's driveways and garage, understand it's not a clean, tidy figure someone read off a spreadsheet. It's an estimate sitting somewhere in that disputed range, and the truth is the exact British total depends entirely on whose count you believe. The manufacturer wants the smaller number, the safety agency won't let go of the bigger one, neither is lying. They're just measuring the fear differently. Now let's talk about what this actually did to people, because a recall on paper is one thing and a recall in your life is another. Start with the money, because in Britain we're too polite to lead with it, but it's always what stings first. These weren't cheap cars. 60-something thousand pounds when new, some pushing 70 with the options ticked, and the moment the fire story hit the press, the second-hand value fell through the floor. Go on the owners' forums, and you'll find the same warning repeated by the people who actually drive these things. Don't buy a used one, not yet, wait until you know exactly which recall it's had, and whether the permanent fix has landed. When the existing owners are telling strangers to steer clear, you know the resale market has quietly died. A car that cost the price of a small flat in some parts of the country, worth a fraction of it, and hard to shift at any price, because who wants to inherit somebody else's fire risk? And it wasn't one and done, which is the bit that really ground people down. This wasn't a single letter you filed away and forgot. It came in waves, an early round of software fixes, then a bigger recall as the fires kept happening. Then, when cars that had already been treated caught light anyway, fresh notices telling owners to go back to parking outside. Then further recalls again, right up into the most recent ones, some aimed at only a select handful of cars, others sweeping the fleet once more. Owners on the forums traded recall codes like war stories, comparing which round they'd had, whether the buyback offer had reached their postcode, whether anyone had actually seen the mythical permanent fix. One recurring line summed up the mood better than any headline. People saying they no longer trusted the car to be left alone. Not driving it, leaving it. When the frightening moment isn't the motorway but the empty garage overnight. Something has gone properly upside down about what owning a car even means. Then there's the daily indignity of it. You've got a perfectly good garage. Maybe you built it for exactly this, somewhere dry and secure to keep a car you're proud of. And now it sits empty while the Jaguar lives on the drive, or out on the road, exposed to the great British winter. Frost on the glass every morning. The salt they throw down on the roads eating at everything. And that same cold, ironically, dragging the range down further on top of the charging limit the recall already imposed. Owners talked about losing something like 1/10 of their range to the software cap, and then losing more again to the weather because they couldn't shelter the thing. You bought a 290-mile car, and some mornings you're looking at a fraction of that, sitting on a driveway you're now afraid to walk past, with a lit anything. And there's a strange grief in that, if you're the sort who actually cares about cars. You remember collecting it. The showroom smell, the silence when you pressed the pedal, the way the neighbor's curtains twitched. You told people it was the best car you'd ever owned. Now you park it at arm's length, and you find yourself glancing at it from the landing window last thing at night, the way you'd check a chip pan you weren't quite sure you'd turned off. That's not how anyone's meant to feel about the most expensive thing on their drive. And spare a thought for the people with no driveway at all. This is Britain. Terraced streets, blocks of flats, underground car parks under new developments, multi-story concrete stacks in every town centre. Just park it outside, away from structures, is easy advice if you've got an acre in the Cotswolds. It's a cruel joke if you live in a Victorian terrace in Leeds and your only option is the residence bay 18 inches from the front wall of your own home, or a communal underground park where the fire brigade has openly said a single EV blaze would be a nightmare to reach and to fight. The guidance assumes space that millions of British drivers simply don't have, which is exactly why this stopped being just a Jaguar problem and started reshaping the buildings themselves. The London Fire Brigade logged well over 100 electric vehicle fires across the capital in the space of a couple of years, and while that's still a small slice of all vehicle fires, every one of them in an enclosed space is a fire that behaves in ways the old rulebook never planned for. So the guidance for covered car parks got rewritten. Official interim advice on how you design and ventilate and sprinkler these spaces, precisely because a lithium fire in a sealed concrete box is a different animal from a petrol car going up. Some multi-story operators started asking hard questions about whether they could even take the risk. Parliament itself looked at its own underground parking, and the fire assessment came back, saying that in a confined space, containing and suppressing a battery and thermal runaway would be extraordinarily difficult. When the people who run the country's own car park are nervous about it, you understand why a private garage under someone's bedroom suddenly feels like a bad idea. Here's a question worth sitting with, and it's the one that comes up again and again from the community whenever this gets talked about. Why can't they just fix it properly? Why the endless dance of software caps and park outside letters instead of one clean repair and everyone gets on with their lives? And the honest answer is uncomfortable. Getting inside a 90 kilowatt-hour battery pack to replace suspect cells is enormous, expensive, slow work. The packs are structural, bonded, sealed against water, hundreds of kilograms bolted into the floor of the car. You don't pop the bonnet and swap a part. In some cases, the maths tipped so far the wrong way that Jaguar reportedly looked at simply buying cars back from owners rather than repairing them, because a buyback can be cheaper and cleaner than surgery on thousands of battery packs one at a time. Think about what that tells you. When handing the customer their money back and taking the car off the road entirely starts to look like the sensible option, the fault underneath was never small. And I want to be fair here, because it's easy to turn this into a pile-on, and that's not honest either. Petrol cars catch fire too. They always have. Statistically, per car on the road, there's a strong argument the average petrol or diesel car is more likely to have a fire than the average EV over its life. That's real, and anyone telling you electric cars are rolling bombs is selling you fear. The difference isn't how often, it's how it burns when it does. A petrol fire is violent but familiar, and a fire crew knows the drill. A battery and thermal runaway can reignite hours after they thought they'd killed it, sometimes a day later, sitting in the compound. It can burn hotter, longer, and it laughs at the amount of water that would drown a normal engine fire. So the risk isn't necessarily bigger, it's stranger. And strange is what keeps a fire chief up at night, because you can't write a simple rule for a thing that doesn't play by the old ones. So where does that leave the bloke on his driveway in the rain? Somewhere genuinely unfair, if we're honest. He did everything right. He bought British. He bought electric because we all told him that was the responsible thing to do, the clean thing, the future. He paid a premium for a car the whole press told him was a triumph, and through no fault of his own, because of a folded scrap of foil in a factory in Poland he'll never see, he's been left with a car that's worth a fraction of what he paid, that he can't safely put in his own garage, that he can't easily sell, and that he's told to keep at arm's length from his own home like it's something dangerous he found, rather than something he chose and loved. There's a bigger lesson buried in all this, and it's not electric cars bad, it's about how fast we all moved. We built a technology, sold it hard, put it in millions of driveways and thousands of underground car parks, and only afterwards started properly working out what happens when the rare one goes wrong in a sealed space. The rulebook is being written after the cars are already here. The I-PACE owners are in a sense the ones who found the edge of the map for the rest of us. Every rewritten car park guideline, every sprinkler spec, every fire brigade briefing about thermal runaway exists partly because these cars taught us the hard way. And the story isn't finished. There have been further recalls, further park outside notices for select cars, further tightening of the charge caps, right up into the most recent rounds. Every time owners thought they'd reached the end of it, another letter arrived. It became a pattern people almost got used to, which is its own kind of sad, checking the post with a little knot in the stomach, wondering if this is the day their car gets asked to sleep outside again. If you're watching this and you own one, none of this is meant to frighten you into a panic. It's meant to make sure you actually read the letter properly, that you know which recall your car has had, that you don't buy or sell one blind, and that you take the park away from buildings advice seriously precisely because a small number of already fixed cars still burned. Boring caution is exactly the right response to a strange risk. But sit with the wider thing, because it's the real story. 40-odd thousand cars, give or take depending on whose count you trust, effectively exiled from the very garages built to protect them, not because of a crash. Not because of neglect, because of an invisible flaw in a part nobody could see, in a car everyone celebrated, sold to people who trusted the badge and the promise and the future all three. That's not a Jaguar problem. That's a warning shot for the whole electric age, and we'd be fools to look away from it. So here's what I actually want to know from you. Do you own an electric car, and would you sleep soundly with it charging in the garage under your bedroom tonight? Or has a story like this one already changed where you park? Tell me in the comments, because the honest answers from real drivers are worth more than any glossy launch review. Drop a like if this cleared up what's actually going on behind that scary headline. Subscribe if you want the truth behind the next one, and I'll see you on the next one. mind how you park.